Now, this subject I meant to comment on as soon as it broke last week, but I had my Thursday evening address already planned out, and on top of that, there was some background researching that I wanted to perform. But in case you hadn't heard, and it's understandable if you haven't, Jason Van Dyke, who had been convicted of murdering Laquan McDonald in cold blood, he was sentenced last week, and the judge decided to give him just a flimsy 6 years, which means that with good behavior, he's going to be out in 3. This was no surprise to his defense team, by the way. They had predicted this. This was exactly what they had expected. It was a dream scenario for the Jason Van Dyke supporters, but they didn't understand exactly how racist and corrupt American injustice is. The judge had the murder charge against Van Dyke, and he also had the 16 aggravated assault charges. And the judge decided that, well, I'm not going to sentence him for the aggravated assault. I'm just going to sentence him for the second-degree murder, and I'm going to give him the lightest sentence that I think I possibly can. He couldn't figure out a way to get around the fact that the guy had been convicted. So he decided that whatever justice the people of Chicago had been able to attain in the jury room, well, he wanted to make sure that it was taken away at the judge's bench. This is just like what happened. I keep coming back to that book, When Corruption Was King, written by a Chicago man, Robert Cooley. He was a lawyer in the 70s and 80s, and he was a mafia lawyer. And at the beginning of the book, he talked about how his very first case, when the mafia put him on the payroll, his very first case was to get a mob hitman off the hook. And he had to go bribe the judge. And the judge resisted at first, saying, look, I've done stuff for the mob before, but I can't do this because it's so obvious this guy is guilty. There's nothing that I can use to justifiably throw out the case, so it'll be obvious to everybody that I'm on the take and my legal career will be over. And Robert Cooley had to tell him, look, I know where you're coming from, but if you don't do this, then both you and I are dead. So the idea of judges who deliberately decide that they're going to ignore the law, that is, especially in Chicago, that is just standard operating procedure. Now, for a lot of you, I know that you are angered by this, and you should be, but I don't want you taking this as any sort of defeat, especially not in the aggregate. This is actually a win for the good guys, and I'll tell you why. This is not pie in the sky. It's a matter of you got to step back and take a look at the whole picture, not just the one small fragment that's right in front of you. Now, before we go any farther, let's keep in mind the white media understands exactly how dirty this is. They understand exactly the public sentiment, the public climate that's out there, the social climate that's saying that the police have to be punished for murdering black people. These race terrorists have to be punished. And the white media understands that as the fourth estate, that is the fourth branch of government, their job is to cover for and protect the other 3 branches. They have to protect the enforcement arm of white supremacy. They have to protect the administrative arm of white supremacy. So the judges and the cops, the local death squads, they got to make sure that they protect them. So the white media is in lockstep, and you can tell because of just how all of the headlines that they've been writing about this sound exactly the same, using the exact same words. Jason Van Dyke, quote, sentenced to more than 6 years. That's the most popular one that you find. Practically all the white media is saying he's been sentenced to more than 6 years. Or sentenced to almost 7 years. That's no prison time at all. That's a slap on the wrist. Second-degree murder is supposed to carry 20-plus years. And they look ridiculous as hell saying 6 years as if that's hard time. He's been sentenced to more than 6 years. That's what you give somebody who gets caught with a DUI. That's not hard prison time. That is not a substantive sentence. And the white media knows that. This is actually them giving the middle finger to the public saying, yeah, we know that you guys have finally had enough. We know that the scam is up. We know that you guys are turning on us. And we're sitting here just throwing in your faces that this is how white supremacy is going down. White supremacy is going to crumble to dust, all the while pulling one dirtbag move after the other. That's all we're good for, and we're just, forget it. This is it. This is all we're going to do then. Since the white media was powerless to stop Van Dyke from being put on trial, powerless to stop him from being convicted, they instead are now bragging that the racist judge blatantly ignored the law, blatantly ignored the case, and used the old I'm white and I say so. That's what happened here. This is fiat. That's exactly what's happening here. Judicial fiat. Fiat meaning because I say so. And you can tell that this animal, Vincent Gone, whatever, however his name is pronounced, understood that he had absolutely no legal basis upon which to refuse to sentence Van Dyke for any of the aggravated assault charges. He was supposed to do all, but he decided, well, I'm just not going to sentence on that. The jury said he's guilty. Well, I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, well, I can't deny the fact that he has to be sentenced. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it where he only gets a few years because we're sending a message, and the message is white racists are standing together. And they're going to go down together. And well, they're probably thinking to themselves some romantic sense of we're making our stand here. Let me tell Vincent Gone and that Dominica Stevenson whore, this is going to be the last stand of the white racist on the bench. This is not going to be a glorious epic for you. This is going to be a humiliating end. But these guys, that Vincent Gone character, the judge who decided to give Van Dyke a slap on the wrist, he knew that he had nothing to stand on. He knew it. And he went into this long, meandering, BS-laden spiel where he's trying to justify that, well, I don't care about the aggravated assault charges because that's not more important than Laquan McDonald being dead. Oh, so you're going to be giving the most severe charge. Nope, he was already telling everybody before sentencing, saying, well, I'm sure that both sides, that I'm not going to be able to please everyone. Well, he was right. He wasn't trying to please everyone. He was only trying to please the defense. He was only trying to please the murderer. That's what he was doing. There were 16 aggravated assault charges, but the judge decided that aggravated assault, 16 counts, doesn't mean anything. The jury comes back and says you're guilty, but that doesn't mean anything because this is white supremacy, making it clear that there's no pretense about the racism. They're being blatant and open and in your face about it. This is what race war looks like. For all the black folks out there who are still trying to hide behind the NFL playoffs and the latest bit of infotainment and celebrity gossip and nonsense, you better wake up and understand the race war's on. The white supremacists on the bench are showing that the judges are going to try to stop the race terrorists from being punished, and they're going to be doing it from the bench. They have realized that they already lost whatever public support they hoped they had. The white media is going to be useless at turning the tide. Jeffrey Toobin found that out the hard way. And now the white juries, even your white juries are looking and going, social climate's too hostile. You know, we're not taking the heat for this. Yeah, you put enough heat on the bastards, they are going to fold. If you put enough heat on them. And it wasn't just Van Dyke, by the way, who the white racists on the bench in Chicago decided they would send a message by letting him off the hook. There were the 3 other white supremacist cops who lied for Van Dyke that night. They filed all sorts of fraudulent police reports. They got called out on it because they were saying that fellow officers corroborated their lies, and those officers took the stand. At least one of them took the stand and said, no, I never said that the murder of Laquan McDonald was justified. And these guys were getting caught in their lies. They were being contradicted by fellow police officers. And yet, those 3 white supremacist thugs who lied about the murder, what they did was they opted for a bench trial. They didn't want a jury. They already, unlike Jason Van Dyke, those other 3 white thugs, they realized that the public sentiment, the social climate's turned against us. We need a bench trial because that's the game that they like to play. The reason that the police are so reluctant to opt for a bench trial is because in too many cases, the DA will be working hand in hand with the defense to make sure that they cherry pick a jury that's most likely to not convict. That's the reason why Chicago has a 35% black population, and yet there should have been at least 4 black people on the jury minimum. That's just a minimum. There should have been at least 4 black people on the jury. Instead, there was only 1. Now, you can't get that kind of lopsided racial inequity on the jury unless both the prosecution and the defense are working hand in hand to try to make sure that they engineer a jury that hopefully will work for the defense. They were trying to throw the case, and they were hoping that they could throw the case during the voir dire process. I told you about that. That's a standard tactic that these white DAs do. They understand exactly that it's illegal to be ethnically cleansing the juries, and yet how many DAs, or how many defense attorneys for that matter, actually raise that point? How many judges raise that point that obviously the black people are being, especially black men, are being excluded from these juries? Nobody ever brings that up. It's supposed to be illegal. but nobody ever enforces it. Nobody ever brings it up. So, what happened in this case was the three white thugs who tried to cover for Van Dyke, they decided to go with a bench trial. And this is a bad idea for the white supremacists, because you're making it where now you've shown everybody we have no faith in the public to be able to believe anything we say. The public's not going to believe us. And how can you claim that you're protecting the public, or that the public should stand with you, when you clearly are saying to everybody, nah, the public's not going to let us go. We need a judge who will let us go. And this makes it where the judges will be seen as illegitimate. They think that all that's happened is they've had a tactical evasion, which is going to lead to a strategic defeat. You're now making it where you're putting all of the pressure, all the blame, all of the liability on the judges. And now you're exposing the support structure that's been helping these guys. It becomes obvious to everybody. You have a governmental system that's racist as hell, and it becomes undeniable. Now, the judge who presided over the acquittal of those three lying thugs, this judicial whore, whose name is Dominica Stevenson, she waited 6 weeks before giving her acquittal ruling. 6 weeks? Why would you wait a month? Because all throughout the trial, she was letting everybody know that she didn't believe anything from the prosecution. Or it's not even a matter of belief. As far as she was concerned, well, this case should never have been brought, and these guys, even if they lied in their reports, well, the video camera doesn't show everything. She was throwing out this woman's so stupid that all she could do was throw out the same kind of lies that you get from the police unions and the officers' benevolent associations. All of these lying white supremacist cop organizations with their stupid talking points, she was repeating them, probably thinking to herself that she sounded smart, or maybe she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, she was going to make a statement to every white supremacist in power that she's firmly on the team. Now, when a fellow judge, by the way, sided with one of the victims of the Chicago police's violence, this Stevenson woman, she took it upon herself to get into a loud argument with them. I guess she figured she was going to reprimand another judge. This is the kind of person who was presiding over the case of these three lying thugs. A judge who decides that if you refuse to back the white supremacists with badges at every turn, then I may not have the ability to punish you, but I'm going to call you out on it, and I'm going to get in your face about it. Well, who knows? Maybe she had more authority than we think, because afterwards she lodged a complaint with the Chicago Circuit Court saying that this judge who refused to side with the police, that apparently he was threatening her, or that he created a hostile work environment for her. And next thing you know, this judge, he was the one who the chief judge of the circuit court had him sent to anger management counseling. All because a racist whore on the bench made an accusation against him. So that's the circuit court showing that, hey, we're here to make sure that we serve and protect white supremacy. We are here to promote, encourage, and defend white supremacy. And if you don't understand that, well, we're going to send you a message. And the Chicago Circuit Court, they made sure to publicize that little reprimand publicly. They publicized it everywhere that they could. They wanted to make sure the whole media caught it. They were sending out press releases, whole 9 yards. Now, I'm not saying that the judge who wound up becoming a target of this Stevenson character, the guy's name is Judge Hooks, I'm not saying that he's pure as the wind-driven snow. I don't even know him. I don't know him well enough to say that he's one of the good guys. All I'm saying is that because of a single incident where he sided with the people instead of the police, that triggered this Dominica Stevenson whore. And she was terrified of the precedent that this could set. That's the kind of person who was presiding over the case of the three white thugs who were trying to cover for Jason Van Dyke's murder of Laquan McDonald. That's the kind of judge that was on the bench. And you don't see any politicians speaking out against her. And all of these civic groups, they're not naming anyone by name. They're being very vague about it. That's done in order to try to dissipate whatever public outrage there is. You make sure that you jump out in front and say, oh, I'm going to speak for the outrage of the people, and it's the system, you see, and we need better justice, you see, and you guys need to give to my civic organization, you see. Well, aren't we going to be picking some targets, people to punish, remove them from the bench, take away their livelihood, crush their bank accounts, destroy their futures? Aren't we going to be picking some targets to punish? We don't need to be all angry now. We need love. Remember what Dr. King said. That's what you get. So if you're letting the white media push some mouthpiece out in front, you're a damn fool. You're going to have to take the reins because nobody else is going to do it. Nobody responsible is going to do it. And by the way, during this Stevenson character's pathetic courtroom performance last week, she spent an hour before finally issuing her ruling. She spent an entire hour doing nothing but lauding those three crooked cops. Never mind the fact that two of them had already been fired for the Chicago police because of their misconduct. Their lying for Van Dyke led to them being fired, but she was sitting here steadily praising them anyway. That she was singing their praises and telling the prosecution that the case was, you didn't really have a case. You were overdoing it, and you don't understand, you see. They're lying, and that's the entire point. This is not even at this point about trying to get people to believe the lie. This is a matter of we are going to be fighting as viciously and as dirty and as underhandedly for our white supremacist power as we possibly can. That's what this is really about. They're not at the point of trying to convince anyone. They realize that they lost the PR war. So at this point, it's a matter of, okay, we may have lost the PR war. We may have lost the war of getting the white majority to be as complicit as we need them to be, but we're not going to lose the brute force war. That's what this is about. It's about sending that message. Okay, fine then. To hell with pretending as if there was a system, because you guys are onto us. Clearly you're onto us. So to hell with pretending that there's any semblance that we actually were trying to have a justice system. Okay, fine then. It's a blatant system of white supremacy. We're putting it in your face. What you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it indeed? So you got a judge on the bench who attacks the prosecution and attacks the only honest officer on the force, a woman named Dora Fontaine. She had the guts to speak out because one of the lying cops that night tried to falsify a report saying that she had corroborated their lie. Now, Officer Fontaine testified against those three lying cops, and the judge attacked her, and she also attacked a civilian witness during her ruling. She was going after the public, going after the clean cops, going after the prosecution. This is what these animals are doing. This was done to send a message. Both by Stevenson and Gahn, they were sending a message. And the message was white supremacy is going on the offensive. And if the only thing we got is the judiciary, then we're going to use that until you take it away from us. The whole damn Chicago Police Department is crooked and dirty. And this problem isn't that the good cops are apathetic or that they suffer from poor leadership. The problem is that in the United States, there's only one or two good cops in any police department, and the rest of them are just a horde of rapists, thieves, liars, and murderers. That's the problem. It ain't just Chicago. The police as an institution are not a public safety organization, and they never have been. What they are and what they always have been is a street gang that the taxpayers are forced to give money to. And that's what the police are. They represent the quintessential protection racket. That's what a protection racket is. You need to pay us some money or something might happen to you. Well, maybe I don't want a bunch of white supremacist thugs who are creeping around my neighborhood trying to intimidate people. Maybe we don't want any white supremacist trash that are anywhere near us. Well, then something's gonna happen to you. You gotta pay the big. Well, maybe I'm not gonna give you any taxpayer money. I'm not gonna subsidize any white supremacist death squads. Next thing you know, those very same white supremacist thugs come to your house or to your business and they arrest you or your loved ones. You're going to hand over your money to these thugs. This is legalized robbery or else. The reason this is happening is because we have submitted to these savages. We're damn sure not fighting them. It's way past time for a little righteous tyranny of the majority. We already have all the power and all the numbers we need. We have everything we require now in order to punish trash like this Stevenson whore and that Gahn bastard, but what we don't have is the focus and the will. Focus means that we're determined to accomplish a given task. And willpower means that we're not afraid or reluctant to do whatever needs to be done. We'll pay the price. That's what willpower is. Willpower means I am willing to pay the price in order to get what I want. You want to lose weight, you got to be willing to pay the price. You got to get up and make sure you hit the weight pile. You get in your cardio. You got to put aside the junk food, whatever cravings and whatever favorite stuff that you used to like. You got to be willing to pay that price. That takes willpower. Now, I think it bears noting, by the way, that the prosecutor of those 3 accomplices to Van Dyke, that was a black woman who was the prosecutor in that case. And this Stevenson whore went overboard to show white supremacy that she was on their team. She was showing out 5 ways from Sunday. She was putting on a show. And even the media was sitting here going, God dang, she should. Even the white media couldn't deny the fact that, wow, this woman sure is. I mean, she's really going overboard to show that she can't stand cops being prosecuted, because that was her problem. Her problem was not the case itself. Her problem was the fact that it even happened. She didn't like the fact that it even happened. And there's good reason for that. She went so far as to say that Laquan McDonald was moving towards the murderer of Van Dyke. Now, that is a lie straight from the police unions. The video undeniably shows that he never stopped walking away from Van Dyke. He never took even one step toward that animal. So why the world would she say that? What she said was a lie. It's blatant jurist nullification. You've heard the expression jury nullification, where the jury has already made up their minds before the case takes place. Well, this is jurist nullification, which is far more dangerous. You got judges who decide that they don't give a damn what the case is. They don't give a damn what the evidence is. They don't give a damn what the law is. They don't care about anything other than we've made up our minds that there is something that we want to see happen in the courtroom, and we could give less than a damn what the law says. We could care less what a jury says. We could care less what the evidence shows. This is what they're doing. They're making it clear that as far as they're concerned, they will destroy whatever pretense of law that white supremacy was pretending to have. They have no problem burning down the very courthouses that they're in, because at the end of the day, the courthouses don't exist to uphold law. The laws were not written to punish white supremacists. The laws were written to punish black people. That's what they're trying to get across. That's a message that they're trying to send. You have some black person who was killed by some white men. Well, that's all good. That's legal. You can't prosecute these guys for that, and we're not going to let you. If I have to be a sacrifice to protect white prerogative to murder black people, then I'll do it. And that's what these judges are doing. They're coming out and showing it. And they're also making it where they're destroying any idea that the system is not blatantly white supremacist. The more pressure we put on them, the more that they're forced into desperate maneuvers like this. And this is desperation. This is not a move that comes from a position of strength. This comes precisely from a position of weakness, because they had no other resort. There was no way to try to use a grand jury to bury the indictment. There was no way to try to rig a jury in order to short-circuit a conviction. There was no way to get out of it, so it was a matter of fine, then we have to take the masks off. In net terms, this is good. This is a good thing, because it makes it where even the white media has less and less means by which to try to defend them or to have any excuses. And that also means that people on the street are seeing this. You can have the murderer be convicted. You can have cops who are on trial for writing false reports, and then you have judges who say, well, we're not going to convict them. What does that show? The problem is not police administration by itself. The problem is not the politicians by themselves. The problem happens to be that you have an entire system that is not broken. You have a system working exactly the way that it's supposed to. And that's when you set the stage for a revolt. You make it much more likely that a revolt will happen when the people see that the laws are not being subverted. It's a matter of there is a policy in effect. And the law is never going to be allowed to get in the way of that policy. It reminds me of the movie The Gangs of New York. You had the quintessential big city boss, William Marcy Tweed, talking with Daniel Day-Lewis, and you had the most powerful man in New York talking to the most powerful thug in New York, though it was hard to tell the difference. And both of them trying to figure out, how do you and I work together best in order to rule the city? And what Boss Tweed wanted was some muscle that would help to keep the 5 points in line. The 5 points being the 5 boroughs. How do you do that? Well, you need some thugs who are willing to use violence, and Daniel Day-Lewis was like, you've already got control of the police. So you already have all the muscle you need. Why call me? And Boss Tweed tells him, well, I can't send the police in for this. And then he says, the appearance of the law must be upheld, especially when it's being broken. So the decision had been made by the politicos that they wanted violence in order to keep the people in line. But it was important that it be done in such a way that it doesn't undermine their apparent legitimacy. Remember when Napoleon said that history is a lie agreed upon? Well, when it comes to white supremacy, the law is also a lie agreed upon. The idea of these social institutions has nothing to do with words on a page. It has everything to do with the real law, the only law under white supremacy, which is that if you're white, you can do whatever you want, especially against black people. This is the reason why they had to go whole hog last week. And keep in mind, Chicago is an alleged Democrat city. It's supposed to be a Democrat bulwark, but look at what the hell you're getting there. You're getting secret torture chambers. You're getting the police being just overbearingly racist. It's as bad as Texas. It's as bad as any right-wing enclave you can name. So what does that tell you? What I've been trying to tell you all along, that when it comes to black people, there is no such thing as white Democrat or white Republican. When it comes to black people, there is no such thing as white liberal or white conservative. There is no such thing as the white right or the white left. It's just white supremacists where you and I are concerned. You may be confused on that, but the white supremacists are not confused. Their bickering is over minor ideological variances that aren't even significant. When it comes to black people, these guys are in total lockstep. They can agree. It's the same reason why neither Fox News nor MSNBC is calling out the rampant racism that was taking place in Chicago's courts last week. Nobody's saying, well, we need to do an expose about the corruption in the Chicago PD. We need to be finding out who these judges are and their track records. Nobody's doing that. You would think that Fox News will look and say, let's smear these Democrat politicians in Chicago and show how racist they are. They're the real racists, not us. Isn't that their favorite rallying cry? Isn't that what the white right is always saying? Why, we're not the racists, these guys are. Well, you got a golden opportunity to go after them. Why not? Because it's just rhetoric. It's just talk. It's just hot air. It's no different than professional wrestling. They get out there, do a little rah-rah, and then you wonder how it is that James Carville, the quintessential Democrat strategist, can be married to Mary Madeline, the quintessential Republican strategist. You look at how these people operate. You got a liberal like Leslie Stahl, and she was married to Alan Greenspan, the quintessential right-wing economist. And you find that across the board. These people have no problems being friends with one another. Ideology is just no different than sports teams to them. They can bicker about their favorite ideology, but when it comes time to talk about how white supremacy is going to maintain its upper hand, there is no argument about that. They are all on the same page. The exact same skullduggery and white garbage that you see happening in Texas is exactly what's happening in Chicago, and exactly what's happening in New York and LA and everywhere else. The kind of racism that you get from a judge like the one who presided over the Dylan Roof trial, where he says that the real victims were Dylan Roof's family. That's exactly what that Vincent Gahn bastard said last week before he let Jason Van Dyke off the hook. He said, well, we need justice for both of the families. We need justice for all the families involved. Wait a minute. Jason Van Dyke's not the one who's dead. By the way, have you ever heard any of these white trash judges say that whenever a black defendant is on trial for harming a white person? I don't care if it's a cop or not. Have you ever heard, whenever a black man is on trial for allegedly harming a white person, have you ever heard of any of the judges saying, well, we need victims for both of the families. Both of the families are hurting right now. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever acknowledges that the black family's hurting just because their loved one had a scrape with the law. Nobody ever acknowledges that a black family's hurting because their loved one is on trial and in danger of losing his freedom or possibly his life. Nobody ever acknowledges that. But the second that a white person's on trial for harming a black person, well, there's two families to be thought of here, and we must be sensitive to both families. Yeah, except whatever ruling they hand down is usually only sympathetic to the defendant. But only if the defendant is white and the victim that they're accused of harming is black. Then all of a sudden, we got to think about both families. But only under those circumstances. They never drag out that canard at any other time. So obviously, with Guyan and Stevenson, these two animals clearly had their minds made up before the trials even began that no matter what a jury would say, no matter what the evidence was, no matter what the law is, law be damned, these guys are going to be acquitted. We're letting them off the hook, and we're doing this because the public's turned against us. The media is useless at insulating or protecting us. So since all of our prior defenses have failed, well, this is the last ditch, and I guess this is how we're going down. Now it's going to be up to us to make sure that they do go down. The pressure has to be kept up on these animals. We got to make it clear that even if you use your courtroom as a stage, well, when you take your bow, we're going to be the ones who draw the final curtain on your behinds. We need to make that clear. Because that's what that Stevenson woman was doing. She was putting on a little bit of judicial theater. Hey, look at me. I'm going to get center stage and show you guys I'm giving the finger to all of these people who think that the law is supposed to mean something. The racists are demoralized right now. They're being pushed back on every front. The jury trial verdict for Van Dyke, that showed that the public is turning against them, so this is all they got. And none of this surprises me, and I don't want it to surprise you either. If you've been listening to me and you're just now saying, man, these judges are out of control, I've been telling you for the longest time that before it was all over, it was going to get to this point. I told you that at some point, as we take away all of the white supremacist DA's little tricks, because the DA didn't want to convict. Don't go kidding yourself that the DA wanted to convict. That's the last damn thing they wanted. Van Dyke got convicted because the jury made up their minds that the law had to be applied. The DA was hardly giving it the old college try. Van Dyke was not supposed to be convicted. They were trying to make sure that he wasn't going to be, but the jury had decided that the law was going to stand. So once it became obvious to the prosecutors, damn, we're not going to be able to help get this guy off the hook, then it became, okay, judge, you got to do your job now. None of this surprises me. It disgusts me, but I'm an analyst, and I recognize that in the aggregate, this is actually a positive sign, because this is confirmation that the police are terrified of juries. That means that they're terrified of the public. You can throw that in the freaking police's face constantly. If you guys are really so innocent, then you should be tried by a jury of your peers. Why do you keep running to the judges? Because the judges are going to let us off the hook. Well, we can't have cops out here who are not under the control of the public, and we can't have judges who decide that they're going to defy the law. They are terrified now of standing before the very public who the white media said was so in their corner. Idiots like Jeffrey Jackass Toobin and others, supposed to be a legal expert, but he's really an expert on nothing, saying that, well, the public just doesn't convict you. Well, what can you do? The public, they are... Because what he was doing was, Jeffrey Toobin's a racist. Have you ever seen that little square-headed bastard? That little mole-looking moron, he is a complete stomp-down racist. Jeffrey Toobin is a white supremacist of the lowest order. And what he was doing was, because he's been on a jihad against black people ever since the OJ trial, what this little animal was doing was saying that the juries, they believe that the cops have a right to keep these niggers in line. Well, he ain't been saying that in a while now, has he? Now that the cops are starting to get convicted, all of a sudden, well, you don't see anyone saying that the juries, see, they always cite the jury as hopefully what they hope to be an anonymous vagary. Just this unnamed mass who never really has a name, nothing specific about them, just the jury. They talk about the jury as an institution. Well, the institution has been subverted by the good guys. It was supposed to be, the jury is supposed to be a rubber stamp committee. That's what they think the jury is supposed to be, because that's what all of the skullduggery during the voir dire process is about. It's about trying to engineer a rubber stamp committee, a group of people who are going to say, no, not guilty, no matter what the law says, no matter what the evidence shows, no matter what the testimony proves. That's what's supposed to happen. Engineer a rubber stamp committee that will let the white supremacist thugs off the hook every time. Well, the rubber stamp committee's broken down. And Jeffrey Toobin's precious little jury that he thought that he was going to be able to cite as, hey, us good white people, 'cause that's what he means. He doesn't mean black people, he means white people. Us good white people, we're not going to convict the police because we understand that they're the ones protecting our white privilege and we're not giving that up. Well, your jury is now broken down, your little jury institution has crumbled, and that being the case, you ain't got none but the judges left, and Jeffrey Toobin, he can't get out there and say, well, the judges are not going to convict. He can't say that. You got to find a way to throw it off on the public, because if you don't, then what you're saying is the system is unabashedly corrupt and that the people running it are telling you you live under white supremacy, you live under white supremacist injustice, and and the laws don't matter. All that matters is our armed thugs. Well, you do that and the public's going to look and say, well, gee, aren't there more of us than there are of them? Nah, you can't set up a scenario like that, so they're in a quagmire right now. They're stuck in a spot, but it's a corner that they painted themselves into. Well, no. I think that the new voices of black media ought to take a bow. This is a corner that we painted them into. They didn't want to be in this corner, but we forced the bastards into it. And these racists are demoralized. That's where this behavior comes from. You start doing reckless stuff like this, these are moves of desperation. They're scared, and they should be. We've eroded their public support. They can't use grand juries to bury a prosecution anymore. And rigging a jury at trial with white supremacist supporters, that's turned out to be ineffective. So since they can't depend on the white public to give them a pass, they've been forced to go directly to the administrators of white supremacist machine itself. The guys who are the administrators of the machine, they've had to go to them directly. And by doing so, they're exposing who in authority is supporting them. They're forcing these white supremacist administrators to go on the record, which is the main thing that these animals want to avoid. So Judge Gahn can go ahead and give every long-winded diatribe that he wants as he tries to explain away his blatant racism. And Dominica Stevenson, she can proudly wave the flag for white supremacy as she flies off a hill. She's decided, I'm willing to die on the hill of white supremacy. Well, you're going to lose everything there, you little whore. We're exposing who is in authority supporting them. These race terrorists and their support staff, they're outing themselves. But they don't have any other choice because we've taken all of their other options away. Once we destroy their judicial support, it's going to be game over for them. And that support's going to begin with us deciding that we are not going to submit to or comply to a system that we know is nothing more than a white supremacist scam. If the system does not work across the board, then it doesn't work at all. And we have got to make it clear. This system is illegitimate. We do not submit to it because it's illegitimate. You've got to say that openly. This system is illegitimate, is a white supremacist scam. American justice is nothing more than a white supremacist scam. That's what you and I have got to say. This isn't a justice system. You're going to a court that's presided over by a white supremacist thug. That's not justice. You cannot respect a system that is being operated by and operated in the interest of white supremacists. That's not a justice system at all, and you don't owe it any respect. You should stop talking like it's deserving of respect, because it's not. We have overrun the bad guys' previous defenses, and this was inevitably where they would have to run. We would paint them into this corner at some point. And if you're listening to me, I mean actually listening, not just turning on one of my videos and kind of half listening. If you've been paying attention, then you would know that I told you that this precise eventuality would come to pass. Well, here we are. I predicted for you that before it was all over, these white supremacist thugs with badges were going to start demanding jury trials because they were going to start demanding bench trials because they'd be too scared of a jury. I told you that that the bench trial was going to be their last resort because they wouldn't have anything else. The DAs are too scared not to indict. They now have to indict, and the juries are putting these bastards away. They're getting convicted. So the cops are understanding, as soon as you reach for that gun, you might as well call the penitentiary and make reservations. Well, not if we got some judges who are willing to say no. Yeah, but what if the public decides that those judges should be punished for aiding and abetting murder after the fact? Because that's what's happening. That's a new phrase that I want you to add to your vocabulary whenever talking about these white supremacist DAs and these white supremacist judges. Aiding and abetting murder after the fact. That's how you should describe it, because that's what it is. And all of this that's happening, these desperation moves, it ain't because the white supremacists did it. It's because we created these circumstances. What happened last week, the desperation from both of those two thugs on the bench, that was because of us. They didn't do that because of their own free will. They were too scared. They got themselves trapped on the horns of a dilemma. On the one hand, they can't afford to be sending race soldiers to prison for killing black people because who the hell is going to enforce the white supremacist status quo? And on the other hand, if they don't do it, then the public's going to look and say, well, hell, obviously the system's corrupt and illegitimate. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. So you had one judge who tried the pathetic tactic of trying to explain away his corruption, and another judge who boldly and just ostentatiously bragged about it. But both of them doing the exact same thing. I think that both the reactions of Judge Gahn and Judge Stevenson, the way that they handled their pre-planned, predetermined acquittals of these murderers and murder accomplices, I think that it's a perfect example of the white liberal, white conservative, white Republican, white Democrat fraud. You had one judge who wasn't being so strident about his white supremacist advocacy, but still advocating nonetheless, still doing it. He wasn't boldly proclaiming, I'm a white supremacist supporter through and through. And yet, for some damn reason, he sat there and said, well, we need justice for both the families. Jason Van Dyke's family doesn't need justice. They need punishment. Justice would have been punishment. And you had the other one, she didn't even try to say, we need justice for both families. No, she didn't say anything about Laquan McDonald's family. Didn't say we need justice for both families. She just said the prosecution doesn't have a case and your witnesses, this is all overblown and shouldn't have been brought to trial. Yeah, see, that's what they were, she was just being honest. Judge Stevenson was just being honest. And that's a perfect example of your good white liberal pals who you listen to on the internet or listen to on television or listen to on radio. You think these people are on your side, and they're not. And this is not going to get any easier from them. They're not, I mean, after 500 years of depending completely and thoroughly on white supremacy for every crumb of their daily bread, they're not going to roll over and say, okay, I guess you got us. They're determined to go down fighting, and that's fine. We're determined that they will go down, period. I prefer that they fight. I don't want them to just roll over. We got 500 years worth of abuse that we got to put back on them. We got 500 years of abuse that we have to pay them back for. I don't want them to just roll over and say, oh, white supremacy's had it. No, I want them to fight. I want them to put up a fight. It'll make it more fun to give them the beat down. We took away the tricks that they've previously been using. And now they see that they can't avoid a conviction, so they got nothing else left because we took everything else from them. And all you white supremacists who listen to my videos, because I'm not naive enough to think that you scumbags don't lurk here. Every once in a while you rear your empty heads. Yeah, we're castrating you bastards. We cut your balls off, put them in a jar, and now we're showing them in front of you and say, hey, I'm playing dice with what used to be your cojones. And every time you have some white supremacist DA or some white supremacist judge, these bastards are going to get it too. They're going to get punished too. We're going to put pain on you animals. We're going to make it where you lose everything. You lose your jobs, you lose your degrees, you lose your livelihoods, you lose it all. We're going to take it all. The judges are the race terrorists' last ditch. And black empowerment is already scheming how we're going to overrun their position. The B-1 Brigade's already drawing up the plans about how we're going to overrun their last ditch, and we ain't taking no prisoners. Anita Alvarez didn't take no prisoners. Dale Cobb in Louisiana didn't take no prisoners. Angela Corey in Florida didn't take no prisoners. Tim McGinty didn't take no prisoners. When black empowerment, when the B-1 Brigade comes for you, ain't taking no prisoners. It's not going to be a matter of you get to get transferred. No, it's going to be done. So we can now add 2 more names to the to-do list. Vincent Gahn and Dominica Stevenson. We can add their names to the list. These bastards have to be crucified in the media. They have to be exposed to the public. There is no amount of scorn that we can heap on them that's enough. And everyone needs to understand, The goal here is not to call them out. The goal is to put them out. The goal is punishment. That's justice. Justice equals punishment. These animals need to be locked in a cage. Take their law licenses, go to the state bar and let them know you better find something to put them in prison behind. Somebody better get a prosecution going. Because, see, the thing is, instead, we got to change our focus. We don't need to be arm wrestling with Kim Fox to try to get her attention off of nonsense like R. Kelly and onto the murderers like Jason Van Dyke. These judges have made the case against themselves for political high-handedness, for malfeasance in office. A judge cannot just simply say, I'm not going to sentence you for 16 counts of aggravated assault because, well, I don't think that it rises to that level. That is blatant open bias. And when these guys whenever these so-called bar associations or whomever the people are who's supposed to have oversight over the people in the legal profession, when they try to say that, well, it's not sufficient to simply say that the judge has a bias, you've got to prove it. No, if he was black, then they would already be all over him. Judge Olu Stevens, that man hasn't had a freaking moment's peace since he decided that he would uphold the law. He said that the juries were not looking like the communities that they served. The juries were clearly being ethnically cleansed, and they came after him, and they didn't say, well, you have to prove that he's biased. They said, he refuses to allow white supremacy to be the order of the day. That's bias. They didn't need any evidence against Olu Stevens. Judge Olu Stevens, they didn't have anyone saying, well, it's so impossible to prove. You wouldn't have a Jeffrey Toobin saying, oh, well, it's just so hard to prove because you can't tell what's in someone's mind. You can't tell. They never do that. They never do that. With Judge Olu Stevens, we don't give a damn what's in his mind. He is refusing to allow us to put together our typical white supremacist rubber stamp committee to just railroad Negroes, and that being the case, he's got to go. He's clearly got an open bias. I've been telling you for the longest time that it would all come down to this, that the racist last line of defense are the judges who are willing to aid and abet them after the fact. Without this, they have no other defenses, and they know it. And that lets you know what kind of pressure that we're putting on these animals, like this Stevenson character. They feel as if they have nothing left to lose now. They're wrong, of course. They got plenty that we can take from them. But as they see it, their situation can't get much worse, so as they see it, they risk nothing by openly flouting their racism. Stevenson knew that she was helpless to stop Van Dyke from being convicted, but she wanted to use her courtroom as a platform to show that she's going to fall on her sword for white supremacy. And a lot of them do this not because they think that it's going to matter at the immediate moment, but because they're hoping that they can galvanize other white supremacists. They're hoping that by standing up for white supremacy publicly that they're going to be able to reinvigorate other white supremacists. They'll galvanize the other white supremacists. That's what it's meant to do. The social climate has changed. Public sentiment is against animals like Stevenson, but these clowns, they spend all the livelong day in their offices or their judges' chambers or having private meetings, sitting around with other white supremacists telling themselves how clever they are. And they give each other a non-stop diet of white supremacist support. It's just a mutual admiration society. That's what their so-called associations are. So as they see it, all of their friends and all of their associates still extol the virtues of white supremacy. White supremacy is still very much in fashion in the social circles of Vincent Gahn and Dominica Stevenson. So that means everyone else in the society must be cool with it too, because, hey, they've been getting away with it for so long, so clearly nothing's changed. They're totally blind to the changes that have taken place right outside their offices, right under their noses. As far as they're concerned, well, nothing's changed in my courtroom, except now they're starting to realize, well, the old days of the cops getting away with it are over. Now they're realizing too late something was happening out on the streets that have now spilled into the courtrooms. They didn't see what was forming in the street because they don't represent the streets. We speak for the streets, and a critical mass of us, the right number of us, are making moves. This is not going to come down to who has the largest number of supporters. This is going to come down to which one of us is the best organized and the most motivated. We've always had a problem as black folks with getting organized, and in too many cases we've failed to remain motivated. The white supremacists know this because we've shown it to them over and over again. We've conditioned them to believe that when it comes to black folks, well, they'll blow off some steam for a minute, but then, we'll go back to business as usual. Just let the niggers get it out of their system. This is what the racists like Stevenson and Gahn are counting on, that we will do what we've always done. We'll be a little angry, and then as soon as something else comes up, especially if some white supremacists get some black feminists to say, what about R. Kelly? Well, we weren't able to punish Van Dyke, so we'll go after another black person because at least we know we can punish them, or at least we can be the cheerleaders while white power punishes them. If you want to show me that you really care about protecting black people, why don't you show me that you're actually going to go to the mat to make sure that animals, pieces of trash like Jason Van Dyke, spend the rest of their years in a cage? Show me that you're going to take the law license, the judge's post, the pension, the livelihood, and any future away from Dominica Stevenson. You're going to make it where this woman's going to wind up living under a highway overpass in a cardboard box. And that Vincent Gahn gets to spend his golden years in a cage for judicial misconduct. If you really want to show me that you're dedicated to protecting black people, then you can start by going after the folks who are really doing damage, instead of waiting around for some easy target who you already know you ain't doing a damn thing to deal with R. Kelly. You're just going to sit back and cheerlead white people because that's who you're looking to. You ain't looking to black folks. Ain't nobody black who's going to be leading the charge because there's nobody black who has the authority to, except for Kim Fox, and even then she's just doing it because white power told her to, and you know it. So since you're so hot and bothered about protecting black folks, why don't you protect them against the white supremacist race terrorists who are prowling the streets, gunning black people down left, right, and center? Why don't you do it? Why don't you do that? Because that would take some real courage. That would actually take some nerve. That wouldn't be easy. You wouldn't be able to sit back and wait while white supremacy deals with them. You have to deal with them yourself. You got the guts to? Are you man enough to? Are you woman enough to? All you black feminates? Two judges, one presiding over a bench trial, the other over a jury trial, but both of them making it clear that they're fighting for white supremacy. This is what a race war looks like. This is how a race war is carried out. And I told you that this was what they would resort to. The racist police would find that the DAs couldn't help them, and the judges would be their last resort. Vincent Gahn, just like Dominica Stevenson, made it crystal clear that he was a de facto part of the defense. He allowed the defense to try to claim that Laquan McDonald's juvenile record ought to be admissible in court. It has absolutely no probative value. It means nothing. It sheds no light on anything. Van Dyke had never even met Laquan McDonald beforehand, and even if he had, it had no bearing on the night in question, so why allow it? Because Gahn was trying to send a message. He was saying, it was already obvious to him, whoops, guess the jury's not going to be a rubber stamp for us anymore. Well, let's go ahead and smear the deceased. If we can't get Van Dyke acquitted, at the very least, we're going to wave the flag for this nigger deserved it anyway. Okay, well maybe Van Dyke's going down, but this nigger deserved it. As they saw, not much came of that, but that wasn't the point. This is how white supremacists try to make it through their day. Gahn's willingness to open up court records, however, stopped with Laquan McDonald's information. As far as he was concerned, everything else, well, we don't need to be making that public. And that's because Gahn was admonished by the courts for keeping the filings in this trial secret. He wanted to keep the case filings secret. He didn't want that getting out. Now, this is just like the grand juries that the DAs use, or used to use, to try to bury indictments against racist cops. The reason for all of this judicial secrecy, whether it's the grand jury or whether it's the court filings, the reason that these white supremacists do all of this secrecy is because they don't want anyone seeing the dirty and illegal maneuverings that they do. And they've been doing it as a matter of course. They've always been doing it. The difference is now people are paying attention. That's the difference now. People are paying attention. And as Gahn showed in open court, when he's forced to have to explain his judicial rulings, he has no explanation for it. It was just him giving like 35 to 40 minutes of just psychobabble. The man's just sitting here a blithering idiot. But he's on team white supremacy, and he understood that he was now going to have to uphold the line for white supremacy. He has to hold the line for him. openly defying the law and popular public will because they're hoping that this is going to embolden a certain segment of white racists. All they need is just a critical mass who hopefully will be emboldened by this. If they show that they're willing to cross the line for white supremacy, they're betting that they're going to get some of the other races to follow suit. These animals are on the defensive. Not only are they afraid that the race terrorists with badges aren't going to be there to guarantee their white skin privileges, but they're also scared that a galvanized public is going to start punishing the racist on the bench. This is the reason why the white media was so disturbed by what happened to Aaron Persky out in California. Aaron Persky was the guy who gave Brock Turner no prison time. That's why the white media was so opposed to him being taken off the bench, because Les Moonves sure does need some judges who are willing to ignore the law, and Harvey Weinstein is counting on DAs and judges willing to ignore the law, and the same thing goes for all the rest of these white supremacist terrorists and all these white supremacist criminals. They depend on that. They understand that the law is not there to punish everyone. It's only there to punish those who aren't part of the in crowd. Oh, you don't have the influence or the connections to make sure that the law doesn't apply to you? Well, you're the one who's going down, no matter what the evidence may be. These animals are on the defensive. Jason Van Dyke may not spend his golden years in a cage, but Vincent Gaunt, and especially Dominica Stevenson, or Demon Stevenson as she should be called, they're concerned that they might. All it would take is just one or two prosecutors with the right frame of mind, and you could build that case against these two. If people start asking whether or not Gaunt and Stevenson have committed blatant political high-handedness, that they ignored the law, well, would the public be able to bring enough pressure to bear that these two would find their white legal buddies abandoning them, the same way that Jason Van Dyke found the Chicago PD and Mayor Emanuel forced to abandon him? A very dangerous precedent got set in Chicago. Chicago is the third largest city in the country. And it's right there in the heartland. It is a commerce center, a cultural center, a media center. And in this place where the white supremacists thought they had everything on lock, they were forced. They didn't want to. They were forced to have to put an indictment on this animal. And they were forced to have to put him on trial. And even though they weren't trying to convict him, it didn't matter. The jury went ahead and took care of that part. Justice was served regardless. And they're looking and going, we're not going to be able to do this as a matter of course. We can't just have the judges letting these guys off the hook as a matter of course. We can't do that. So how do we stop this? There are no good options here because we took the options away. And unlike Van Dyke, there's not going to be any white judicial types willing to fall on their swords for Gaunt or Stevenson. But what needs to happen is A, the public will has to be there to demand punishment for them, because that's what the law is. The law is whatever seems like it's going to prevail. That's what the law is. You can go back to Prohibition with that one. When it seemed that there was public sentiment for that kind of Puritanism, that kind of puritanical bent, then the law was we're going to outlaw alcohol. But when it became pretty obvious that organized crime was the result, and the people are going, well, hell, if you legalize alcohol again, hopefully some of all these shootings in the streets will stop, then that became the law overnight. That's what the law is. The law is whatever seems like it's going to prevail. That's how you get Jeffrey the Jackass Toobin in one breath saying that, well, the juries, they just believe the police. They trust the police. They're not going to be convicting any cops. And next thing you know, he's silenced. Because he thought that he was on the side that was going to prevail. He found out the hard way that he wasn't. And now he's hiding his head in the sand and saying, let's go after some black men. Don't think that the white media is not in on this. They're the main ones who organize this crap. The white media heaped all kinds of laudatory praise and accolades on that Vincent Gaunt character. They talked about him like he was the reincarnation of Daniel Webster. That he was the most above-board judge who ever lived. Now that should have been your first clue, even to the densest among you, that the fix was in. When the white media goes praising some judge, what that means is he's going to uphold the principles of white supremacy. Because you never see them praising any judges who have a track record of punishing white supremacists. You never see them lauding them. You never see them lauding an Olu Stevens. They would say that he's controversial. They would describe him as being controversial. That's how they would talk about him. He wouldn't be this sterling example of judicial and erudite puritanism in the court. And by the way, Vincent Gaunt, he's had run-ins with the law, by the way. He's had a number of run-ins with the law, but the white media didn't talk about that. They ignored the fact that he was arrested for violation of firearms back in the freaking 70s. They decided, well, we don't want to mention that. And his other brushes with the law, well, we don't want to mention that. We got to leave that part out. Now, just before Gaunt let Van Dyke go, he said that no one was going to like his decision. That was a blatant lie, because it was 4 months ago when Van Dyke's own lawyers said that they fully expected this race terrorist to only get 3 years. You don't have to take my word for that, by the way. You can look it up, Chicago Tribune's website. So it was only a few months ago that Van Dyke's attorneys were saying, at worst, he's only going to get 3 years, which, by the way, is exactly what he's going to work out to. That almost 6 years that the white media is trying to make sound like he got some real hard time. With good behavior, he's going to be out in 3, which is exactly what his lawyers expected. Now, how the hell would they know that? And by the way, it was only a month before his lawyers were making that prediction that the Chicago Tribune Online reported that a local attorney, Stephen Greenberg, said, quote, "If you're Jason Van Dyke, I don't think you can ask for a better judge to hear this case." He was talking about Vincent Gaunt. They were asking, what kind of judge is Vincent Gaunt to hear this case? You had a local attorney in Chicago saying, hey, if you're Jason Van Dyke, Vincent Gaunt, you couldn't have asked for a better judge than him. Now, he didn't say if you're the family of Laquan McDonald. He didn't say if you're the prosecutors. He said if you're Jason Van Dyke. So what does that tell you? Obviously, the fix was in. All the local attorneys knew about it. See, that's the stuff the white media is not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to make it sound like, well, he's one of the good guys. Good meaning he stands for white supremacy. The white media fully understands that when they're about to pull some world-class racist move, they first have to creep their way up to the target. As Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, their MO is to prepare the minds of the masses for whatever world-class racist maneuver they're going to try to pull. They can't just come out of the gate and do it. That's why George W. Bush, before he decided to run into Iraq, he had to spend all that time buttering the American people up, trying to set up his phony baloney case. Iraq, Saddam, 9/11, sending Colin Powell to immolate himself at the UN and make himself forever branded a fool and a liar. He had Condoleezza Rice and the rest of the chumps. He had to put those sock puppet morons out there because before he could go into Iraq, first he had to lay down some sort of fraudulent case. That's part of the normalization process. It's not a matter of how much people oppose you while you're doing your dirt. It's going to be after you've done your dirt. Do they come after you to punish you? A large part of that is going to depend upon whether or not you have sufficiently laid down some sort of insulation for yourself. That's the reason why they do this. They understand the need to control public opinion, to dampen public opposition, and to manage the outrage by trying to normalize their outrageous maneuver. That's what it's about. That's the reason why they slow creep up to it. That's why Vincent Gaunt, even at that late date, he was still too scared to come up the middle and say, well, you guys know that I've been on the side of Van Dyke from the very beginning. Hell, he couldn't have asked for a better judge to hear his case. He couldn't have asked for a more compliant judge than me. He felt like, I got to try to put some sort of finesse on this. I got to try to put some sugar on this crap and try to make it seem as if I put some thought into it. They understand exactly the necessity to have to lay down a couple of bricks in place before they run roughshod over the public. They know that. This stuff is planned out in advance. They understand the need to manufacture rationales and rationalizations for their racism because they know that what they're doing is indefensible. So as I've shown you, months before the judge threw the case, the defense seemed confident that they knew exactly how much time their murdering client was going to get. And the DA is in total agreement with them. That's how you know the fix was in across the board. Now we understand why the judge wanted the filings kept secret, so that nobody in the public would see the prosecution and the defense and the judge colluding. You have the prosecution and the defense both totally pleased with a verdict that has completely outraged the entire public. The entire public's not happy. The public's furious. But the prosecution and the defense, they're totally pleased with it. This is nothing less than an attack on the black community. A racial attack by 2 white supremacists in the judiciary, 3 if you count the prosecutors. And what is the black response to this white aggression going to be? Well, the response I would suggest is a response I can't suggest. So what response is safe to mention in a media that's accessible to the white thugs who run PukeTube and who run the enforcement arm of white supremacy? What is a media safe suggestion that I could give? The black community of a necessity must respond to this white supremacist aggression, and our response of a necessity must be forceful. It has got to be in their faces. We have to make sure that they're punished and that they know that they're being punished. Anita Alvarez knew she was being punished, and the other scumbags knew they were being punished. Now, this will probably be very different than the form that it took against those clowns in the past. Probably something that's got a little bit more bite to it, something that's going to hurt their wallets, hurt their futures, hurt their careers. We must subject the white supremacists to a daily, non-stop breaking process every day in their faces. Every day we must humiliate and injure them. Every day we have to undermine the perception of legitimacy that they have. Because once you take the perception of legitimacy away from them, then the public will be free to make sure that these guys are punished to the fullest extent of the law. They're going to have absolutely nothing to keep the public from punishing them in any shape, form, or fashion. So that's the reason why legitimacy has to be taken away from them. Every day we've got to undercut that. Every day remind them, these guys are not legitimate. They're not legitimate. When Brock Turner got let off the hook, those white women in California, they went after that judge and they got him off the bench. Will the black community of Chicago go after Vincent Gaughan's job? Will they go after Dominica Stevenson's job? These animals have to lose their judge's post, but they also have to lose their law licenses. They have to lose their livelihoods. Make examples out of them that will put the fear of God into any white supremacist on the bench. By the way, in the case of Dominica Stevenson, her judicial appointment term ends this summer, but she's not an old fossil like Gaughan. And being a judicial whore is clearly her life's calling, so it's safe to say that she'll be counting on getting to keep her judge's post. She wants to get reappointed. So unless black people prove that Anita Alvarez wasn't some one-off, then you're going to be playing right into the hands of a piece of trash like Dominica Stevenson. She's counting on nobody doing anything to make sure that she loses her job. She's counting on, well, they'll be unhappy about it, but ain't nothing they can do about it. Or rather, she's hoping, well, they're not going to do anything about it because you know how those black people are. They'll be unhappy for a minute, but they'll never organize. And they're definitely not going to stay on my case. Heck, they can't even stay focused on something for more than a day. You expect them to stay focused on something for a whole 6 months or to be able to organize some sort of recall or put pressure on the powers that be? Nah, that's a little bit beyond them. Is she right? The black people of Chicago will prove it. They're going to show whether she's right or wrong. But here's something else you need to keep in mind. Merely removing the white supremacist trash like Gaughan and Stevenson, that's not sufficient. It's not enough merely to get the white supremacists out of office. Our problem is not just that the white supremacists have control of the levers of authority. The problem is we don't have some of ours in there. That's what the real goal is supposed to be. The real goal is supposed to be to get some of ours in there. That's what the mission is supposed to be. Get some of ours in there. Get some Olu Stevens in there. That's what the job is supposed to be. We need to take everything from these animals, their law degrees, but take their post and make sure that we have them because we're supposed to have them. It's not even a matter of that these animals are causing problems for us. The good guys are supposed to be in charge. The good guys are not supposed to be content to let the bad guys have anything. We're supposed to be in charge. Those judicial offices are our offices because they cannot be called justice unless we're in there. The only justice comes from us. We have earned that right. We've spent 500 years earning the right that ours and only our point of view, only our understanding, only our interests are just. We've spent half a millennium proving that. We need not justify it to anyone. We need not be accountable to anyone. We need not get permission from anyone, or take an opinion poll, or put our finger to the wind and see if people don't have a problem with it. The so-called prosecutor in the Van Dyke trial, this Joseph McMahon character, this animal, he's someone who needs to be punished too, because that bastard said that he was happy with the sentence Van Dyke got because, quote, our goal was to find the truth, ask for justice. It was not revenge. So there you have it. As Neely Fuller said, white supremacy's MO is to control both sides of the argument. They couldn't control the jury, but they could control the judge and the lawyers in the court. Prosecutors have the ability to contest a sentence, by the way, if they feel that it's too lenient. They do it against black defendants all the time. And this case, especially what happened with Vincent Gahn, where he fully, deliberately, in full view of everyone, I know the guy's guilty of 16 counts of aggravated assault, but I'm not going to sentence him on those. As far as I'm concerned, he might as well not have been convicted. That was a partial acquittal that he did. From the bench, he decided there won't be any sentence. This is a clear-cut case, tailor-made for challenging a judge who gave a sentence that was far too lenient. But as the prosecutor showed, he's on the side of the defense. He made no pretense that he was on the side of the people. He was on the side of the white supremacists. Neither the defense nor the prosecution actually expected Van Dyke to be convicted, but as it became more and more clear to them that that's exactly what was going to happen, then they decided, okay, we're going to go to Plan B. And Plan B is bench trial, a de facto bench trial. The judge is going to have to handle this one. Instead of this blatantly racist sentence making you sad, because I know some of y'all out there, and it really makes me roll my eyes up into my head with threatening for them never to come back down again. When I see you guys going, oh, this made me sad, this made me want to cry, God dang it, get the hell away from me with that crap. This is war, damn it. And in war, you know that the animals are going to be pulling all sorts of dirtbag moves. So if you're still a baby and you get caught up in your feelings because the white supremacists are acting like white supremacists, stay the hell away from me. You ain't built for this. Instead of the white supremacists pulling a typically white supremacist move, instead of that making you sad, or even making you discouraged or disappointed, what it needs to do is to make you mad. It needs to increase your resolve. You need to say, you know what, I was furious before, but now I'm freaking red-eyed with rage. I want these bastards to go down hard, and I want to make sure I'm the one who does it. Anita Alvarez went down, Tim McGinty went down, and now it's Vincent Gahn and Dominica Stevenson's turn. Except we're going to have to make an example out of them that makes it where everybody, the white supremacists, pee their pants at the thought that they're not going to give some race terrorist with a badge the max. We got to make it where they understand. You don't deal with them, then the public's going to be coming to deal with your entire career. They need to know that. Because what happened was blatant jurist nullification. That has to be punishable and punished, and that's not going to be for the DAs to do. That's going to be the public. The public makes it clear, hey, if the DA's not going to do his job, then the public will do ours. A couple of years ago, many of you were saying that there was no way that any of these racists were ever going to do time. Oh, these guys, they ain't going to get punished, man. Man, ain't nothing going to happen to them, man. And I suppose at the time, with Darren Wilson and Daniel Pantaleo, that may have seemed to be the case for some of you who don't want to fight white supremacy. For some of you who are looking for any excuse to not have to fight white supremacy so you can get back to World Star Hip Hop, or you can get back to your Xbox, or you can get back to the latest rerun of Scandal. You know, for you clowns, you guys are always willing to throw in the towel before the fight even begins. You're looking, no excuse is too flimsy or too weak for you to say, I can't fight white supremacy. That's the reason why I purge you morons when you come around my channel. As soon as you bring me that crap about, oh man, we can't beat these guys, well, you go ahead and be a defeatist. We don't do defeatist here. Defeatist is the antithesis of power. Because after Daniel Pantaleo, then came Peter Liang. Now, the Asians may have bribed the DA to throw that one out, but that DA is roasting in hell. And Peter Liang still ain't found no second act yet. Then came Michael Slager. He's going to be cooling his heels in prison for a while. And now this. Chicago had a rock-solid reputation. The cops don't get punished, especially not for harming black people. Ask John Burge, the notorious white supremacist who was torturing black children for his career. But now they're starting to get convicted, and they're concerned. There's so many cops who have done so much racist dirt, they're like, damn, you're going to have to put 3/4 of the police department behind bars. Yeah, that's the plan. That's the entire idea. This is going to be a mass purging of these police departments. That's where this is going. Yes, that is the goal. And what do you call the conviction of Jason Van Dyke? I call that the first domino. And there's a damn boatload of others that need to fall as well. He's just the first domino. That's all he is. This was never going to stop with Jason Van Dyke. Even if his co-conspirators had been convicted, that's all right. There's still a few thousand others of those scumbags who need to be in prison orange too. Or do they wear prison yellow in Illinois? I'm not clear. But for those of you who want to take the defeatist line, you look pretty stupid now, don't you? You were glad when Darren Wilson got away with it because you felt like that gave you cover to say, well, we can't do nothing, man. Let me get back to HBO. But now that the bastards are going down, you're terrified that you're going to have to actually fight white supremacy, and you don't really want to fight white supremacy. You don't want to do anything because you're not useful for anything. So what's happening now is your excuses are being taken away, so you'd rather sound like a fool than sound like a coward, and I will denounce you as both. But for those of us who actually are going to do the hard work of making sure that white supremacy gets put back into the crypt that it crawled out of, we understand that what's happening here is in fact the first domino, or at least it's going to be if we have our way. Whenever one of the white race terrorists goes down, that confuses the white supremacists who support them. But more importantly than that, it scares them. White supremacy is a house of cards. They've known that from the beginning. It's a house of cards that rests on an extremely delicate balance. All it would take is just a little resistance, and the whole house of cards comes tumbling down, and they don't have anything to replace it. That's the reason why they have to use hyper-violence, and they have to get their hand-picked clowns out here to try to distract and demoralize us, because it wouldn't take much to knock them down. Look what the hell we've been able to do. Ever since black people became the third largest ethnic group in the country, for some strange reason we've been throwing our weight around with a lot more force. What does that tell you? This ain't a numbers game, at least not the way that you think of it. That's the reason why I don't give a damn if black people are the third largest, second largest, the largest, or the 10th largest. It ain't a matter of how many of us there are. It's a matter of how well are we organized, and what kind of resources have we brought to bear. Because that's going to be what determines who gets what. That's what Dr. Claude Anderson was trying to point out to you. It's the resources that you have at your command that determine who gets what. And where the rubber meets the road is, how do you use your resources, leverage them for your own benefit? Not merely to reward your friends or to reward yourself, but to punish those who are trying to attack you. Do you leverage your resources for the sake of being able to influence the public, to get the outcome that you desire in all events? Is that what you're doing, or have you got better things to do? Are you making excuses for why that's too much work for you to do? Or are you just waiting to see if perhaps Jason Van Dyke goes on patrol and decides to ambush you next time? Maybe that's what you're counting on. Well, hopefully I won't be the one who gets ambushed next time. I'm sure Philando Castile didn't think that he would be the one to get ambushed that day. Sandra Bland didn't count on being ambushed that day. Charlena Lyles didn't count on being ambushed that day. Ayanna Jones didn't count on being ambushed that day. Or Tamir Rice. Black people never seem to count on being ambushed until it's too late. I'm telling you, get proactive. Don't wait until the bad guys come after you. Take the fight to them, damn it, before they take the fight to you. So while it may seem crazy to the cowards among you that the white supremacist judges would be this bold in their racism, they would be this bold with it in the face of the public's opposition, they're in a fight for their survival. They are now facing a scenario that's scaring the hell out of them, and it should. We've got the bastards painted into a corner because we painted them into that corner. What happens when black people mobilize against them? When black people prove that not only do we have the organization, but now we have the persistence. We are going to be persistent about it. Not just for a day, not just for a week, not just for a month, not just for 5 years, until we get the outcome that we desire. And what's that outcome? Justice. Well, what does justice look like? It looks like punishment. God dang it, that's what you can call this black empowerment sphere. What do you call the new voices of black media? You can call us the Punisher. That's what you can call us. Because that's what this is about. They see black people as one big monolithic group. Great. You can see the new voices of black media as just being one big monolithic group. And that big monolith is the Punisher. That's what we are. This is about punishment. Most people are sheep. And this includes the white community. Most of them are not hardcore white supremacist ideologues. Now, while most of them are sympathetic and supportive of white supremacy, they're not like the Gons or the Stevensons. White supremacy's economic and social giveaways are what the white elite use to organize and motivate the rank-and-file white folks, but that's like a dog's owner using a bone in order to get his dog to go in the direction that he wants. The dog's not really all that happy about chasing after bones, but, it's a matter of he's got some bait out here, and it does tickle my eye, and, well, it's easier than having to get it myself, so here we go. Now, in that sense, in a very real sense, when you look at the actual hardcore white supremacists vis-a-vis the black community, we actually outnumber the white supremacists. I'm talking about the ones who are stomped down, rock-ribbed, hardcore, die-hard white supremacists. We actually have them outnumbered. Because there's more black people than are willing to admit who actually have a stake in this or who potentially could. We outnumber the hardcore white supremacist ideologues who are running this entire mad scheme. But our problem is we haven't built up our own apparatuses to organize or motivate our rank and file. And organizing and motivating our base, this is a must. Because the bad guys understand that every time they pull a white supremacist stunt like the one last week and let someone go who the public can clearly see is guilty as hell, they're undermining the very perception of legitimacy that their injustice system needs. Government is a covenant between the governed and the governing. It's a covenant, but it's one that rests upon the masses because you need the masses for taxes, you need the masses for a population, you need the masses for everything. Go read Niccolo Machiavelli's classic treatise, The Prince, where he points out that if you're going to have a choice between displeasing the nobles and displeasing the masses, it's always safer to go with displeasing the nobles because you don't really need the nobles. You can get new nobles. But if the population turns on you, then you're out along with the nobles. So it's always safer to bet on the masses because there's more of them. People only obey the police or engage with the courts because there is the idea that these institutions are legitimate. That's the reason why I brought up that little quote from Gangs of New York, that the appearance of the law must be upheld, especially when it's being broken. They understand that at the end of the day, if the people do not see that the system has some manner of legitimacy, if it's not perceived to be legitimate, then they're not going to go along with the scam. Everybody knows it's a scam, but the thing is it's a scam that works for them every once in a while, or at least it's a scam that partially goes after the bad guys once every blue moon, some of them anyway. We're making it where that delusion is falling away. They won't be able to hide behind that falsehood anymore. We're ripping away the scales, the lie pulled over the world's eyes. We're now ripping it away. Because as the public sees racist cops breaking the law, and they see that it's the judges who are openly supporting them and boldly advocating for them, then the police and the courts are no longer seen as legitimate. And who will they go to protect them? Who are they going to go to protect them from the public's righteous outrage? Who are they going to appeal to? Without legitimacy, nothing can stop the public from removing you. And I mean physically, so the more we force them to show their true face, the worse that it gets for them. We can afford to up the ante. It works in our favor. We only gain from upping the ante. We only gain from increasing the pressure. We only gain from stepping up the attacks. These guys, on the other hand, every time we attack, what happens is they lose ground. Every time we attack, they got to back down. Every time we attack, they got to fall back. And now they're at their last ditch. And they're hoping that something's going to save them. Well, let me go ahead and save you white supremacists some suspense. the Vincent Gons and the Dominica Stevenson and all the rest of the trash out there. The goal is to make sure that you are punished, completely and thoroughly punished for your white supremacist crimes. You think that you've gotten away with something? You've gotten away with nothing. You have, in your minds, won a battle. Damn it, this is a war. And you didn't even win a battle. You only won a minor skirmish. You didn't even really win it. All that happened was you made yourselves feel a little bit better about the loss that you took. It works in the favor of black empowerment, no matter how this turned out. If the white supremacist race soldiers get themselves sent to prison, we win. If you let them off the hook, then it's clearly an act of illegal judicial fiat. The public looks at you as being illegitimate, which draws them closer to our side, and we still win. It's chess, not checkers. I'm not interested in whether or not we win a single move of the game. I'm interested in checkmate, and that means that there's a strategy at work. We are playing the long game here. This is not going to be concluded in a single day or a single trial or a single year, but it will be concluded, and in such a way that we are satisfied. This is the goal of black empowerment. We have now gored these bastards on the horns of a dilemma. They can't back down, and they can't afford to keep digging in their heels either, so their only hope is that black people will lose interest and quit the field. After all, this has happened practically every time before. As the racists in the courtroom see it, the entire movement to punish police was largely a media invention. That's how they see it. Well, if the media hadn't picked up that story and ran with it, if the media wasn't reporting on it, if you guys in the media would just stop reporting on it. That's where all that Blue Lives Matters crap came from. They were like, we need to make the media stop reporting on the police's violence. Well, look, a cop got killed. More cops got killed before Black Lives Matters than afterwards. But that's something the white media doesn't put out there. Because what they were doing was they were forced to report on it. And they were forced to report on it because social media was heating up. That's the thing that white supremacy has. They have to control both sides of the argument. If they see that social media has picked up some stories and they start seeing that aggregators and news sources outside of official channels, that's where the heat is. People are going to say, hey, this is something we really want to see, so we're going to go over here. We're not going to bother with these official white media mouthpieces. So the white media is forced to pick it up simply to remain relevant. But when they pick it up, they ain't doing it for the sake of media coverage. They're doing it for the sake of a media cover-up. Now, as you and I both know, the idea that apparently the heat on the police is going to go away as soon as CBS and NBC and MSNBC do, that is a delusion. That's what the white supremacists in the courts and in the police departments are telling themselves. If the cameras go away, then the angry multitudes will too. Well, you and I both know that the entire police accountability movement, which is a very tame name and the wrong name for it, it should be the police punishment movement. It was born online. It wasn't born in the newsrooms of the white media. The white media has been nothing but shameless cheerleaders for these thugs with badges. The white media has never tried to hold the police to account. They have been nothing more than the PR wing of the enforcement arm of white supremacy. So it was online where this started. And while the white supremacist trash who run Twitter, Google, and Facebook, they can try to impede or suppress it, but the problem is they can't stop it. We don't need the white media to give this coverage. This was not an invention of the white media. They didn't create it, so they can't stop it. The only ones who can stop it are black people. That's it. We don't need them to report on it. All they're going to do is lie anyway. We need to cover these things ourselves and be our own media. Stop trying to figure out what the bad guys are saying about what's happening to you and start finding out what your own people are saying. I don't care if the white media ignores what we do. This isn't about being seen on their airwaves. This isn't about being seen. This is about being effective. And we measure our effectiveness by how many of our enemies get punished. We measure our effectiveness by how consistently we punish those who attack us, like these two pieces of trash, Gahn and Stevenson. We have to teach the racist judges that we've already overrun their position. We've anticipated what they would do. I was the one who told you that they were going to be resorting to bench trials because they would have no other choice. The juries would simply be too dangerous. And what goes beyond that is you play on that. You make it clear, see, they're guilty as hell. And we can delegitimize both the police and the judges at the exact same time. Show the public, hey, these guys, they're working together to subvert the law. See, there is no law in these courts. These courts are illegitimate. You can delegitimize the entire administrative arm of white supremacy. You can make the courts are completely illegitimate if you're playing the long game. If you're playing your game, which is to make it where the enemy is on the defensive and you keep the bastards on the defensive. If that's the game you're playing, you can win. That's where this goes next. This is not about whether or not the white supremacists decide that they're going to run away from juries and run into the loving arms of some white supremacist judge. This is about what we're going to do to expose these white supremacists and to expose their institutions. They rely on their institutions to help push their agendas, and the courts are an institution. Why don't we undermine it? The courts are a safe haven for white supremacist thugs. We got to make it where people understand that. These courts, these judges, you're in it with them. You're one of them. You're in it with them too. Put the bastards on the defensive and keep them there. You don't get your marching orders from the propaganda arm of white supremacy. You get your marching orders here. You go falling on your sword to protect a white race terrorist, then you're only going to get to do it once because you're going to lose your job, your livelihood, your future, your credentials, and everything else. We're going to take your freedom from you on a long enough timeline. That'll be standard operating procedure because that's where this is going. This is just the beginning, folks. I would love to say that we've made it through the first inning, but we haven't. These are just the first few tries at bat. We got a long way to go, folks. So those of you who can only follow a social movement to the extent that it has entertainment value, get the hell away from me. You ain't built for this. And by the way, before you say that it's not feasible that judges will be routinely put in prison for not putting white supremacists in jail, that depends on us. Remember, as Dr. Claude Anderson taught, governmental leaders react to the conditions under them. The same idiots who were trying to cop out behind, Darren Wilson, they let him off the hook, ain't no we can do. Now they're not saying that so much anymore. Yeah, you see, it's not just the white supremacists on the bench who are hoping that black people won't fight. They see that black people are targeting racist politicians for removal from office, and what they're really scared of is that we're going to start targeting them for prison time. Well, let me go ahead and take some of the suspense out of that for you. On a long enough timeline, that's exactly what you'll get. That's coming too. Anyone who decides that they're going to defend the race terrorist overtly or covertly, you're going to be punished. You go ahead and make it clear that the public is going to be in the face of the state bar and say, we're going to find out how you animals got in there, and if you don't remove these scumbags, if you don't make it where they cannot practice law, then the public will make it where they cannot practice law. You go ahead and you put that in front of them, and all of a sudden, those same state bar disciplinary committees who were telling everybody that we don't have grounds to disbar Gahn or Stevenson, we don't have grounds to punish them, all of a sudden, they're going to start to say, well, you got to come in, we got to do something about you. The exact same way that Jason Van Dyke for the longest time had gotten away with the murder of Laquan McDonald, until the public galvanized and put some pressure on Anita Alvarez and put pressure on Rahm Emanuel. Next thing you know, he found himself in handcuffs the very next day. Whatever happened to there were no grounds to indict? That's what Anita Alvarez was saying. There's no grounds to indict, In other words, we don't see that the public's in our grill about it. We don't see where the public is ready to punish us, so there's no grounds. As soon as the public said, now we're here, we woke up, we got the pitchforks and the torches, and we're outside your window. It's going to be Van Dyke or you. And what happened in the end was it was both of them. Both Anita Alvarez and Jason Van Dyke had to go. It's just a question of us applying the pressure. These animals are cowards, whether it's the racists in the police, the judges, the DAs, or the state bar. They're all cowards. White supremacy is a coward's game. When the public reacted to the Laquan McDonald video, Rahm Emanuel suddenly decided that there was something wrong with it. Anita Alvarez suddenly remembered, hey, a crime happened. right before she got tossed out on her worthless behind. And then Kim Fox, who never saw a cop whose ass she wouldn't kiss, she suddenly realized she better prosecute Van Dyke and fast. Now, because race terrorists have always gotten away with it for so long, none of them thought that Van Dyke would actually be convicted, but they seriously misjudged the social climate. They're scared. They don't want any bricks taken away from the blue wall because the police are the only things standing between society and justice. Why do we not have a just society? Because white supremacy has put a bunch of armed thugs to stand between us and justice. We must teach the white supremacists that aiding a white race terrorist attack, either at the scene or in the court, will not go unpunished. The only reason Van Dyke was even indicted was because black people got Anita Alvarez out of office. The white powers that be realized that the goalpost had just been moved, but this time it was moved by the good guys. They couldn't avoid prosecuting the bastard, so they had to have a wrinkled-up racist fall on his sword for them. Well, we have to make sure that defending these guys costs you. Even if this Vincent Gaughn character decides to flee the courts tomorrow, that's okay. He's still got a law license. We start tallying up what his assets are. What does this bastard have? Let's take it away from him. If he decides that he wants to go into the private sector, which he'll have no choice but to do, then we make it where anyone who does business with him gets punished. We make it where everything and everyone that he's ever known winds up being punished and winds up suffering because of their association with him. We make it where he's a pariah. We make it where his family are pariahs. We make it where nobody, these guys are cancer. Nobody's going to come anywhere near them. Make them radioactive. That's what you do. You put the mark of Cain on these bastards. You put it on him, Dominica Stevenson, and everyone that they know. You make it where they are anathema to the society. The goal is that these animals are going to find out that they can be punished for aiding and abetting violence against black people, and that they lose everything for doing it. Everything. Tally up whatever the hell they got. We're going to find ways to attack it. We're going to attack your bank account. We're going to be attacking your associations. Any prospects that you have, we're coming after all of it. It's not enough for us to only have the power to reward our friends. We also require the ability to punish our enemies. We have to make sure that defending white supremacists comes with a heavy cost. You cannot aid and abet white supremacists for free anymore. But we're the ones who have to charge that price, and we're the ones who have to make it clear that the price is going to be steep. White supremacists can understand that. If all they have are bribes, well, that's going to be ineffective pretty fast. All you need is a Malcolm or a Professor Black Truth, an African who doesn't give a damn how much money you wiggle it under their nose. You do that, and the carrots all of a sudden become worthless. I care more about hurting white supremacy than I do about money. So you can go ahead and wiggle all the dollars you want under my nose. It won't mean a damn thing to me. So using carrots alone, that's not going to be enough to ensure that we get our way. It doesn't work for the white supremacists, so why do you think that nothing but carrots will work for you? We need some sticks as well as carrots. We need something that not only can hurt our enemies, but also can act as a deterrent, because that's the whole point that a stick is for. It's not there so you can be beating and whacking on the mule henceforth and forevermore. You're doing it so that you can do behavior modification. If the horse won't go in the direction that you want, you make sure it gets hit so that it learns this is the direction you're supposed to go in. And you can expect some strict, pointed discomfort if you don't. The white supremacist is a coward. Our problem is that we haven't dedicated ourselves to putting up apparatuses, that is, institutions, dedicated to putting some pain on the bastards. That's our problem. That's the reason why you saw me retweet that whole thing about first them. That's the reason why you saw me doing that. It's important that we get into the habit of doing what every group who is serious about their power does. Whenever you see things not going your way, you're supposed to be looking around to find a trustworthy person with a good track record who you can write a check to. Somebody who you can put some money in their pocket and say, now here's who you're going to be my attack dog. And here's who I'm going to sick you on. That's why you need to be supporting the New Voices of Black Media. That's the reason why when you see the New Voices of Black Media telling you to get involved and pass around the hat, that's the reason why you need to do it. The white supremacists have their attack dogs. They got entire kennels full of attack dogs. Got them in the media, got them in the civic organizations, got them in the halls of government, got them in the courtrooms, got them in the prisons, got them in the state bars, got them everywhere. They got their attack dogs biting you all the damn time. You need some attack dogs to protect you. Who's your guard dogs going to be? Your guard dogs are going to be the New Voices of Black Media. Because every time that you put some money into the pockets of the New Voices of Black Media, what you're saying is, now here's who I want to sick you on. And as you've seen, we can produce results, reproducible results. Now the bad guys have a huge head start, but as you've seen in recent months and years, it's not an insurmountable lead. We can beat the bastards, but it's all going to come down to how determined you are. If you're only concerned as long as the latest white supremacist outrage makes the white media, if that's where you're getting your marching orders from, then forget it. You're not serious about this, and stop pretending as if you are. But on the other hand, if you are serious about this, then you better make sure that you stay close to the brothers who are getting the job done. And you make sure that you enable your attack dogs to keep on attacking for you. Because that's the whole job of the media at this point. Power is used as a shield long before it's used as a sword. That's the reason why we started with defense first. We're not yet at the point where we're ready to take out the long knives and go on offense and start gutting the bastards. But we are at the point now where we can start trying to blunt their attacks. We can start calling it out, and we can start pushing a substantive counter-narrative. We are at that point, and with your support, it's only going to get better from here. The bad guys have seen up until now, they've seen some black dysfunctional folks. Consistent inconsistency. That's what they've seen from us. That's what's emboldened them. That's why that Dominica Stevenson whore thought that she could pull the stuff that she did. As far as she's concerned, in a few weeks, the niggers will forget about it, and that'll be the end of it. They saw what happened to Anita Alvarez, but they also know that black people only rallied once the white media picked up the Laquan McDonald story. Or I should say the critical mass necessary to topple them only under those circumstances, because it was trending in the white media. But you better not forget that it began in the black media, the real black media. I ain't talking about the old black media, the dead black media. Black people, too often, we have a bad habit of staying angry for a few minutes. We may perhaps vote one racist out of office, but then we allow white supremacy to put a black sellout like Kim Fox in there to take their place. And then it's back to business as usual. We feel as if we won a victory when in truth we just helped white supremacy expedite the switching of the deck chairs, the transfer of one white supremacist from one post to another. No, the smart move would have been get Anita Alvarez out of there and get one of our own in there. So who's going to step up? These racist animals like Stevenson and Gahn, they're betting that this is going to be yet another typical case of black folks needing to blow off some steam, and then they're going to go meander in the corner. Now, I don't know if they're right. Only you can answer that, and you can't answer it with words. You answer it with actions over the course of years. We've already got the organizations in place. We've already got the beginnings of institutions in place. What's required now is you got to treat it like a tree, a very delicate tree. You got to make sure that you water the New Voices of Black Media. Make sure that there's plenty of sunlight. Keep the weeds at bay. You got to nurture that tree so that when it starts to grow, it's going to be strong enough to protect you from the non-stop assault of white supremacy. That's what's happening here. You need to make sure that you nurture and support these new voices that are speaking on your behalf. Because what's going on here is not merely a legal contest. This is a battle of wills happening. We've already shown that we can remove prosecutors, and not just one. We can remove as many as we want, and not just in one city, but all over the country. Next, it's time to prove that we can remove the judges too. It's time for us to exercise some real power over these bastards. You saw how shook up they got when white people went after a judge. What happens when black people start making it clear these judges are going? Now, the white media, they're going to be so scared, they're not going to be given that much coverage because they cannot afford to lend their voices to that because that would be too much. That scares these editors. A lot of the stories that don't get shown in the white media is not a matter of whether it's newsworthy or not, or even if it's in the interest of white people or not. There are some events, some circumstances, some happenings that are just so scary, so intimidating, so fear-inducing for the white media. They're just terrified to report on it. And black people, especially black men exercising power over white men, that is the sum of all fears. That is the unholy of unholies. That is the worst case scenario. So the white media looks at that and goes, we are not going to report on that. So you make sure that the white supremacists get put on notice. This doesn't stop until we're in charge. That's what's happening here. It ain't about Van Dyke. It is not even about Vincent Gahn or Dominica Stevenson or all the rest of the white supremacists. This is about you and me having our rightful place in the world. And our rightful place is in charge. And when you're in charge, you make sure you punish the ones who have offended and opposed you. That's the prerogative of being in charge. As they've seen that the police have gone from being untouchable to now being routinely put in prison, the bad guys are in a panic. It is our job to make sure that they're also in pain as well.